'Twas the day before the election, red wave taking over the House. Tim Walz is hiding like a swamp rat mouse. Polls are shifting. The GOP will take charge. The Republican majority will be very, very large. Welcome to the 2022 election analysis, where we will be giving you our predictions of all these upcoming races. William, what's going on?
Man, I did not think I'd make it through that.
Oh, man.
Also, Tim Walz is not hiding. He's actually campaigning. As much as we want him to be like Joe Biden, it's just not going to happen, and he's putting up a good fight. But MAGA Jesse, it's good to be with you. You got to show people your new shirt.
Absolutely. I got this new shirt here. Check that out. MAGA Jesse branded. You know, things are happening in this world, and, you got to put it out there that you're not afraid to stand up for your beliefs, and that's exactly what I do. I'm not afraid to say I'm MAGA all the way, ultra MAGA. So
who are you trying to sell to right now? You got the whole bit. You don't have to further.
Hey, well, I got to make sure people are aware. But,
Okay.
we got some awesome elections that we're going to go over because, this election, we've both been following it nonstop and seeing all of these interesting campaigns and debates and ads and everything that's going on nationwide. It's so exciting. And between the U.S. Senate, the governor races, and things going on right here in Minnesota, there's a lot to talk about. And I couldn't find a better guy to talk about it with than William Beck.
Yeah, well, Jesse, I know you follow this stuff pretty religiously, so you and I have some disagreements, and people aren't here for our witty banter.
That's
so
right.
I say we just get into it. We wanted to start with the U.S. Senate races, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be the best place to start. So we can get that map pulled up here and start digging right into it. So there's going to be obviously some swing races that are going on here.
Yeah, and by the way, these aren't our predictions. This is just the stock map that came up with 270 to win.
Yep.
Credit to them for this useful tool. But Jesse, where do you want to start?
How about we start with the left side here? So we'll talk about Nevada.
Okay.
Between the Attorney General, Adam Laxalt, and Catherine Cortez Mesto, or whatever her name is. She's no good. She votes with Joe Biden all the time. And Nevada is starting to shift red. We were seeing it in 2020. And especially with Trump not on the ballot, it's going to be easier for these Republicans to win in the state of Nevada. Las Vegas is shifting. Are you thinking the same thing?
Well, I'm just trying to process the blasphemy that just came out of your mouth. Was Trump not on the ballot? It's going to be easier. Take the hat off, sir. How dare you?
Hey, just because I like Trump doesn't mean everybody does. And I understand the way that some of these elections go. And Adam Laxalt, he's a high-quality candidate, Attorney General. So,
well, that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, this is a referendum on President Biden and his performance these last 2 years.
Definitely.
And he's had probably the lowest approval rating we've seen in decades for a president at this point.
Right, and the media wants to boost it up and pretend like it's 44%. It's probably about 30%, 33%. I don't think there's many people out there that actually support Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of those people. I'd say about 35% of the population will vote for him regardless.
Yeah.
And then the rest, it's maybe a bit of a toss-up. So, I think Nevada is one of those no-brainer Republican seats this year, to be honest with you. I am going to put that in the lean red category only because, again, in 2020, we saw Biden take the win with 10,000, 11,000 votes, something ridiculously small like that.
Yep.
So, all right, well, let's turn our sights towards Arizona. We have astronaut and current Senator Mark Kelly versus the what is he? Venture capitalist Blake Masters.
Yeah, that'd be a fair
cool
description.
Guy Blake Masters. What do you think's going on there, Jesse?
And I think Arizona's going to be slightly tougher than Nevada. It's going to also be an extremely close race. It might end up being the closest race for the U.S. Senate. And the Democrats have Mark Kelly. He's been voting with Joe Biden all the time. He's pretending like he has an independent streak for this election. But you only hear about that stuff from Democrats come election time, and then as soon as they get in there, they're fighting for every single radical leftist idea out there. And things have been exposed within Mark Kelly's campaign via Project Veritas. There's some awesome investigations that people should be looking into because Mark Kelly is misrepresenting his views. And luckily, Project Veritas is out there exposing it. So ultimately, I'd have to say it could go either way. It's a 50-50. I'd really like to see Blake Masters win this thing, but that one is too close to call. I'd probably say lean red, but it could also be a lean blue.
Yeah, I mean, for those who need the extra context here, Mark Kelly won a special election in 2020, same with Biden winning the state. It was very close. It was within a few thousand, probably a similar margin to Nevada. I think it was slightly larger, if I'm not mistaken. So Democrats feel like they've been gaining ground in this state. And Kari Lake, I mean, we'll be talking about this when we get to the governor's race, but Kari Lake has been
on
polling
fire
ahead in most polls by maybe 4 to 5 points from what I've been seeing. There are one or two that have Katie Hobbs, the Democrat challenger, up, but I don't see any way that Kari Lake doesn't win, and I don't believe that many people actually split ticket vote anymore. So.
Right. There won't be that many people that vote Mark Kelly and then Kari Lake. So,
right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so we can leave that one as is with the color unless you want to shift it. But
disagree.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tilt red.
Absolutely. Red wave. And then we can look at Utah right above Arizona. That's a very interesting race between.
Let's not talk about Utah.
But Mike Lee versus Evan McMullin. Evan McMullin is the never Trumper who ran as an independent. He's a CIA operative who tried to throw the 2016 election so that Donald Trump couldn't win and so that Utah could be swung over to help out the Democrats. And luckily, the polls look great. Mike Lee's going to win it, and people are seeing Evan McMullin for the fraud he is. You agree?
Sure. I mean, what is interesting about this race is that there is no Democrat opponent. Evan McMullin is running as an independent.
Yep.
And he's actually said that he'll caucus as an independent once he gets to the Senate. He won't caucus with the Republicans or the Democrats, kind of like how, who is it, Angus King and Bernie Sanders?
Both of them caucus with the Democrats. Yep, even Angus King.
Yeah.
He affiliates with the Democrats.
Yeah, so both of them caucus with Democrats, but Evan McMullin insists he would be his own independent man. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares. Mike Lee is going to carry this election.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I wasn't even interested in talking about this, because quite frankly, it's not a noteworthy race in my opinion.
Yep, I agree with you there. How about we move over to Pennsylvania,
yes.
Our favorite.
Yes.
And how about we actually cue up the John Fetterman video? We've had so much fun with John Fetterman, the Pennsylvania race. There's been so much to talk about. And he actually had an ad in 2016. You can't even believe that it was pre-stroke. It is that bad.
Okay, all right, Jesse. Not everyone knows the context here, though. So John Fetterman's the current incumbent lieutenant governor, but in 2016, he was running for United States Senate.
Right.
He didn't win the primary. So this is an ad from, and you can tell it's lower quality, from 2016. And I believe.
Yeah, so Dawson, if you could pull up that Fetterman ad, it's amazing. It's incredible that this 2016 ad is so poorly done. And here we go.
Mr. Fetterman. Mr. Fetterman.
Yeah?
You need any help?
I'm running for the U.S. Senate, kid. I need all the help I can get.
You're running for Senate?
Sure.
Where's your suit?
Yeah, why not?
And your flag pin? And your hair?
Oh, hey, kid.
It's on his back, you see.
I just want you to know I'd vote for you.
Hey, thanks, kid.
You want a drink?
Nah, no.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
Where did this drink come from?
Thanks.
See, they cut here, and the joke is he chugs the whole thing. He could have done it in one take, I feel like, right?
Hey, kid. Catch.
Wow. Thanks, Mayor John.
So cheesy.
Made in Braddock. He's not even from Braddock, though, is the thing.
Yeah.
What's a jag-off?
I'll tell you when you're older.
I mean, it's supposed to be cheesy, right?
I guess so. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, and that ad gives me more questions than answers. Where is John Fetterman? Why is he so out of breath? And where is he? Is he at a school? Why is he at a school? why is this kid coming up to him and giving him an open drink?
Well,
why does he chug it all?
Okay,
It's so confusing, and all he says is, "Hey, kid," you know. It's
you're getting
what's
them
going
too
on?
hard of a time here. I'm not a pro Fetterman guy, but the ad is supposed to be cheesy. I think this is it's clearly at a football game party or something. I don't understand him stumbling out of the room. Like, is he trying to look like he's drunk? That I don't really get. But the kid's wearing a Steelers jersey, and he gives him. It's not an alcoholic beverage. It's like
it's like a Coke.
It's a Coke, yeah, with the Fetterman branding on it.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to know is, did they actually run this on TV?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it's up still on John Fetterman's YouTube page.
Well, it's on his YouTube page, but
yeah, and it's an ad that, Republicans have been blasting it out again just because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, back to this Pennsylvania race, this was something that we had been saying, this is a toss-up. It could go either way.
No.
Not anymore.
No.
After that debate performance, it sealed the deal for Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz is going to win that thing.
And I've actually been saying for months that, I think Tilt Red, probably. I've been saying for months that Dr. Oz is going to win. It's not updating up there.
Yeah. Weird. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, agreed with you. Yeah, this is something that is starting to shift red and could end up helping out Doug Mastriano lower on the ticket. And it's impressive. Dr. Oz hasn't run a very good campaign, but things are at where they're at now, and he's run a good enough campaign to beat John Fetterman.
Yeah, I mean, so for those who don't know, John Fetterman suffered of a stroke like a couple days before his primary election, which he won handily. But he hasn't been the same ever since. Like, you watched him put together complete sentences in that video. That's a thing of the past. Like, that was actually what I got from that ad. Like, wow, this guy actually was somewhat coherent back in the day. And look, I'm not making fun of him. Like, it's actually kind of sad to see that.
Yeah, he should have never been forced in this position. It's pretty tough to see what they're doing to him, and definitely, they shouldn't be treating him this way. And I had just seen Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil saying the exact same thing, that they shouldn't be allowing this guy on stage and doing this right now.
Dr. Phil on Joe Rogan?
He was.
Really? I need to watch that.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's keep her moving here. We're going to be talking about the governor races, too, after we get through our Senate prediction. Just to give you a bit of an update, we are at Republicans are currently holding 52 seats. Democrats are at 47. And there's one, and we still have the state of Georgia. Let's run down to Georgia.
Let's go to Georgia.
So what are your thoughts there?
That's going to be one. If Herschel Walker if the red wave comes out like it should, he could end up avoiding a runoff. But Georgia's a funky state. They have these runoff elections. I think that if a runoff is avoided, that means Herschel Walker wins. If a runoff happens, I think that means Warnock is going to win.
And a runoff occurs when
no
neither
candidate
gets over 50%.
Yep, correct. And so that's a very real possibility, especially considering that there is a libertarian in this race as well. That could end up splitting off some of the Herschel Walker vote. So we'll have to see what ends up happening here. But, as of now, I'd have to say if it goes to a runoff, which it most likely will because it's Georgia and we know of all the fraud and things that go on there, I'd have to tilt it towards Warnock. It's not something I want. I'd love Herschel Walker to be in there. He's awesome, but things are at where they're at, and I can only hope so much.
I think you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too.
No, because I see where you're coming from here, and I do think that a runoff is inevitable. But I think that the tides are still going to be the Republican favor.
Even after these midterms, right? Because Georgia may look at it and say we need to double down. We need an even bigger Republican majority to take on Joe Biden.
So I think it's going to go Republican in the end. You think it's still going to go to Warnock. So we'll leave it as a toss-up for now.
Okay. And probably New Hampshire is the last real toss-up election for us to go into here.
Well, no, you got to consider it from the left's perspective. They start holding out hope for Tim Ryan in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Medela Barnes in Wisconsin. Where else have we not talked about?
North Carolina, but Ted Budd, that one looks pretty obvious that he's going to take that one. So,
yeah, I mean, so let's just breeze through these real quickly. Ohio went to Trump by over 11 points in 2020, something like that. So it's really a safe seat. And even though Tim Ryan congressman, previous presidential candidate. He's been polling relatively well there. We know that polling from the state of Ohio has been absolutely abysmal over the past couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
In 2016 and 2020, the pollsters had Ohio going to the Democrats, and it has not yet, and it has not by large margins.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yep. And Tim Ryan, he's better than the average Democrat because he's more moderate, but a lot of people see him as just another establishment slime ball. So people are ready for some change, and J.D. Vance is bringing it. So I agree that one's going red.
Yep. And then we can move over to the state of Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson looked like he was in trouble for a couple minutes there. When the Dobbs v. Jackson abortion decision from the Supreme Court came out, Democrats across the nation were kind of amped up, and the polling reflected that. Now, Medela Barnes is the current lieutenant governor for the state of Wisconsin, and there were a couple polls that had him up. It seems like Ron Johnson has come back and taken his lead. He's leading by 4 to 5 points per poll from what I've seen.
Oh, yeah. And, a lot of people look at Mandela Barnes as he's leaving a failed administration. Tony Evers isn't going to get reelected. We'll talk about that in the governor stuff. But, he's abandoning his post as lieutenant governor because things are not looking good.
Right. And I think it's appropriate to make our last one here on the state of New Hampshire.
Yep.
So what the heck is going on in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting one between Don Bolduc and remind me of the Democrat
Maggie Hassan.
Oh, Maggie Hassan. Yes. So that's going to be a very interesting and close call. Bolduc is starting to rise in the polls. He's getting support from all kinds of new people, and he has walked a very fine line between being because he was seen as the establishment pick before when he tried to run for the U.S. Senate, and now he's being seen as the alternative, the liberty option. So he's done a good job walking that line. It's probably, in my opinion, the closest race that we're going to see is New Hampshire. I'm not sure how that one's going to go quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, those New Englanders are tricky on who they vote for because Chris Sununu is also a Republican, incumbent governor.
Right.
And he's up in the polls by like 10 points or so. So it's interesting how New Hampshire does its elections. They're a bit of a swing state in some ways, but the latest Trafalgar poll showed that Hassan was up by only 1 point.
Yeah,
I believe.
And New Hampshire has been shifting redder and redder and redder. So, they've got a real libertarian streak to them as a state. So we're going to end up seeing what happens there. As of now, I'm not sure what to make of it. Do you have a prediction that you'd say it should go to Bolduc?
I think I've pitched myself as the optimist today, so
absolutely.
I am gonna say it.
Red wave
tilts red. Tilts. There we go.
Absolutely.
It's really more of a gray.
Yeah.
All right. And we're leaving Georgia as a toss-up, which I think is foolish. You look at the betting odds on Predict It.
Sure, make it red.
Really?
Go ahead.
You want to make it red?
Let's make it red. I want to see that entire map red, so let's make it happen.
I'll do it tilt red.
Alrighty.
Even though we're probably not going to know the result on election night, unfortunately, because it's going to go to a runoff, probably in January.
Yeah, right. It could be a ways.
So that leaves our final prediction, 54-46.
Yep.
So that gives Republicans control of the Senate. They needed a net pickup of 1 seat, and they ended up getting a net pickup of 4.
Yep.
And
there's a lot more Republicans up for re-election than Democrats, so it's a tougher one, but they're making it happen. And I love seeing all the new faces of the Republican Party entering into the U.S. Senate, so I'm very excited to see it happen.
Yep.
Do we want to move over to governor predictions?
Yeah, let's move over to governor predictions. Let's get into the governors. So, again, this is not our prediction. You are looking at 270 to wins, 2022 consensus. So this is how they think things are going to go. Of course, they are a little bit. We're not going to leave any of these as toss-ups. I would rather not leave things as toss-ups because I feel like that's the wimpy way out of things. We are going to
let's make some calls.
A call for each of these races tonight. So let's get into it. We have You really want to talk about the Oregon race. So
Oh man, oh do I.
let's talk about it.
Absolutely. I even have a sticker for Betsy Johnson right here on my laptop. Put the people back in charge, you know? Us MAGA people, we're not afraid to call it out and stand with independence. And, you know, truly, MAGA people, we're not the types that say, oh, we need to vote for every single establishment Republican. Not a chance. No way. Sometimes we got to stand up for ourselves. And also, in the Oregon governor race, there is a real potential for an independent leader. And she's been cast aside by the media, you know, and she left the Democratic Party because of how vicious and how crazy these people were getting. You know, they were allowing all of the crime on the streets. They were standing behind Antifa in Portland. And Betsy Johnson was willing to stand up to it. There is an amazing ad that she has out there. I have it sent over to Dawson. We should check that out. And you know, William, you can watch it, and if this doesn't convince you, I don't know what will.
You're not going to convince me to vote for someone more liberal than the Republican. I
would disagree that she is. So
272 subscribers. Wow, she is really pulling this
I'm
thing
one of
off.
them.
All right, let's listen.
I was one of the first women certified to fly helicopters with external loads. I built an aviation company and took on the tough jobs, rescuing lost hikers and flying over Mount St. Helens. I've never been afraid of a challenge. That's why I'm running as an independent leader, loyal only to the people of Oregon. As governor, I'm going to take the best ideas from both parties and force them to work together. I don't worry about making the extremes happy. I guess you can characterize me as an equal opportunity pisser-offer. You don't have to leave the Democratic or Republican Party to support me.
Yeah, all
you
those
just have to
great
want a better
democratic
Oregon.
ideas they have. We
Because
should
for me, it
implement
comes
those.
down to just one thing. This daughter of Oregon won't give up on the state I love without one hell of a fight.
Betsy Johnson for governor.
I'm sorry.
Why
I'm
doesn't
gonna...
every home in the U.S. have
All right,
solar
yeah.
panels?
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I mean, I'm ready to fly high with her.
This is radical centrist behavior. This is like Jesse Ventura and Jesse. I'm worried you're going down a rabbit hole here. You become yeah.
What?
No, it's. I hate the political divide. I hate the MAGA Republicans, and I hate the extreme Democrats.
That's not what she was saying.
That is what she was saying.
No.
Yes, it was.
No.
Yes,
She's
it
more
was.
MAGA than the Republican.
That's just not true.
Oh, it is, man. I mean,
She's
this
talking about
Republican, she's
taking
the
Democrat-
establishment pick. She's the
taking-
establishment, you know, propped up.
Tell me
you
more
know.
about the
Christine
Oregon
Drazan.
establishment that you know so much about.
Well, you know, she's the one that allows the, you know, House minority. She's, you know, not putting up a fight against these people at all. It takes leadership to actually get some shit done, you know? And, you know, I know some people will say, you know, it's all policy. No, it's not. Sometimes it takes someone to galvanize people, just like Trump did. Betsy Johnson, she can galvanize. She can galvanize. Christine Drazan, it will be a do-nothing governorship. I'd rather have someone who can actually get something good done. And Betsy Johnson, I think she's even more hardcore on the important issues. When she talks about climate change, she says, you know, it's not the people. We don't need to be blaming the people. It's these damn forest fires. You know, we need to put out the fires. And that's exactly what's going on.
We need action on climate change. we need a governor who's
Well,
actually. That's the problem, Jesse.
I'm saying, who wants
let me
forests
finish.
to burn?
Let me finish. This woman is a fighter, I'm sure, but she's going to be a fighter for all the wrong things.
Oh, disagreed, man. I've
She's
seen
going to
every
implement
debate.
California car regulations on those poor
Doubtful.
Oregonians? What would it?
Oregonians.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
You know, maybe we'll just have to agree to disagree, because I am bought in. I think that she is telling the truth. I think that I don't have to agree with everything. I'm just looking at the three options and I go, I'd be with Betsy if I was there. So
Well, that's great. But let's get back to how we think election night's going to turn out. Because
Sure.
honestly, we're predicting wins for a lot of these rhinos. I think, quite frankly, Dr. Oz is a little bit of a rhino.
Sure.
But we still think he's going to win. And in terms of Oregon, Betsy Johnson's really been dragging down the Democratic ticket, as you've seen from polling. She's consistently been taking, around 8% of the vote right now?
Oh, it's been more than that.
It has been more than
10 to
that, but
15.
her supporters have been falling off in recent polls.
That's the big media lie.
And in fact, in the most recent poll, you can see that a lot of her supporters have gone back to the Democrat, Tina Kotek. She just pulled ahead of Christine Drazan by 1 percentage point. But up until this point, Drazan has been beating Kotek in every single poll, and it's because of Betsy Johnson.
Yep, if Betsy Johnson, and Republicans should be thankful, because if she wasn't in this race, the Republicans wouldn't have a chance. And Tina Kotek is the most radical leftist that could ever be the governor of Oregon. It's embarrassing to see what's going on there. She's, Elizabeth Warren on steroids. It's tough to watch, and we can't allow that to happen. And so I would obviously rather see Christine Drazan take the governorship than Tina Kotek, but out of the options, I got to go with my conscience, and my conscience is telling me to support Betsy Johnson.
All right, so if you had to make a prediction right now, where's the race going?
Betsy Johnson.
Lean red.
Go ahead.
All right. As much as I love the independent spirit, I'm not anti-voting for independence. It's just I don't want to support an independent for the sake of supporting an independent.
Agreed. I completely agree.
I don't think you do. All right, so let's head down to Nevada. This is pretty cut and dry.
Yep.
I think the Republican candidates have done a good job of helping each other out. So I'm going to put that as lean red. The polls have been looking good for Joe Lombardo. Is that who it is? Yeah. So the polls have been looking good for him. We already knew Nevada was going to be close. So in this red wave environment where you're seeing Republicans up on the generic ballot plus 2 or 3 points, it's inevitable.
Yep.
All right, let's head down to Arizona. We mentioned in the last prediction for the U.S. Senate that Carrie Lake is outperforming Blake Masters in the polls, and it looks like she's going to have a good night.
Oh, I think so too. And her opponent is afraid to debate. Katie Hobbs will not debate Carrie Lake, and she says that she doesn't want to give Carrie Lake any more of a platform. That's not the truth. It's because Carrie Lake would wipe the floor with her. It would be over, and it's already over because Katie Hobbs also caught up in some Project Veritas information that's out there, and there's some sketchy things going on with her campaign, and she's misrepresenting herself, and she's just running a terrible campaign. She's a disaster everywhere she goes, and it's looking pretty good for Carrie Lake. And normally, a MAGA Republican like this shouldn't have much of a chance in Arizona, or I should say it should be a lot tougher for them typically in Arizona because of the John McCain legacy and everything. But Carrie Lake has defied the odds. She's going to take this thing.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about this race. Carrie Lake is not only conservative, but she's very good performance-wise. Like, she has a kind of Trump energy to her.
Right.
Like, she's very quick-witted. She loves to torment the media.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's definitely a Trump element to it. Blake Masters arguably is trying to come off as more moderate than she is. And in the state, again, like you said, with John McCain, you have Jeff Flake. And when
John Kyle, the whole history.
Yeah, and when you run MAGA Republicans in this state, they've been losing in 2018 and 2020. So it's
But
really
it's time for a
interesting.
shift. The red wave, the red tsunamis, it's going to change it. People are fed up. So
lean red?
Absolutely. I'd even say for sure. I think it's a done deal.
Solid.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You want to talk about New Mexico?
Yeah, New Mexico's interesting. It's Ronchetti is the Republican. He's a weatherman who has, he's run good campaigns in New Mexico before, been able to
He ran for Senate in 2020, right?
Yep. And so he's been able to remain conservative and also appeal to regular people. He's someone, the polls aren't looking great for him. I'd love to see him pull it out. I would say it's lean blue right now, but that's one of those races I'd hope to be wrong on.
Yeah, me too. I would hope to be wrong on that. And what's interesting, we're here in Minnesota. People have been talking about the New Mexico governor's race more than the Minnesota governor's race. And in some polls, Scott Jensen is doing better than Mark Ronchetti is, which is interesting to note against two incumbent governors of purple-ish states, maybe with a blue lean, I would say.
Yep.
So I do agree with you. I'm actually going to put this in the tilt. Is there a tilt? Oh, I passed it.
Yep.
Okay, I keep thinking it's a lighter shade of blue. All right. So Colorado.
Yep, I don't think there's much to talk about there. Jared Polis is probably going to win. So the Democrat will hold on to Colorado.
Yep. So let's talk about Kansas, because 270 to win actually has this as a toss-up. And in fact, I think 538 does as well. Maybe even RCP. I haven't been paying attention to that one, though, so I don't know.
Yep, and there's an incumbent Democratic governor there, Laura Kelly. And
she won in 2018 in the blue wave, which was interesting to see. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, sometimes we see in these southern states, or we see in the east, that liberal states will sometimes vote for a Republican governor, and Republican states will sometimes vote for a Democratic governor, just for some sort of idea of balance in people's minds.
Right.
But that's not going to be the case in this election, because Laura Kelly has been running too closely alongside with the Democrats. She supported these COVID lockdowns and mandates and all kinds of crazy stuff. So Derek Schmidt, he's just a typical Republican, nothing too spicy about him, but you know, he's probably going to win just based on the fact that people are fed up with these Democrats. So I would have to predict that Kansas is going to flip red in this election.
Yeah, I'm going to look up this poll because Kansas has been one of those states that they haven't really been polling, and everyone's kind of like, let's see the polls.
Yeah.
And the most recent one I saw had the Democrat up.
Oh, interesting. But, you know, a lot of these polls, we know the polls are wrong in a lot of cases, so we have to take them with a grain of salt. But it is interesting to see these polls where they claim that she's leading, because just based on what what we think is going to happen, I would guess that cannot be the case in this election.
Okay, here we go. So this is on 538. Emerson College did a poll from October 27th through the 29th, 1,000 likely voters. And Kelly leads 49 to 44. So it's, I don't know what that means. I've talked to people from Kansas, and they do believe it's getting more blue. And some people would point to the failed abortion referendum you saw earlier this year as proof of that. That's a whole other discussion. There are reasons for that. But it's really interesting. Right.
Yep. Once they start throwing in all these legal terms, and once people have to read the actual coding of laws and everything, it confuses people, and so people don't end up voting the way that they actually feel on some of these ballot initiatives. So, but that is a discussion for another time.
I feel like if we're going to talk about red New York, we have to talk about blue Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, let's turn Kansas red here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so Oklahoma. There have been a couple of polls, if you wouldn't mind looking those up, because I don't actually know the numbers on these, but the Democrat has been in a tough race, really putting in a lot of energy and effort, and it seems like the hard work is paying off. And the incumbent, Kevin Stitt?
Yep, Kevin Stitt.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like he's not gaining the traction he needs, and I'm not sure why that is. I think if you look at the trends...
Well, it looks like he had some Republican primary opponents, so I'm sure that there were some issues with him among the conservative base. So I'm sure that, that had to have been a major issue.
Yeah, so I don't think it'll end up being a factor, but it is a state that Republicans are going to want to pay attention to in future cycles. Same with Texas. Oklahoma could be trending blue, same with Alaska, quite frankly.
Right. And an interesting thing that we should point out about this Oklahoma race is there is an independent in the race who is a former Republican who left the Republican Party because of vaccine mandates and whatnot. So,
interesting.
And I believe he's actually a liberal. So I think that he was saying he wished the Republicans were further on board with mask mandates. So that's not going to necessarily be too much of a pull away from Kevin Stitt. There's also a libertarian, but probably not too much to be expected there. I think that Oklahoma should hang on to be red, but it's definitely a scare to Kevin Stitt.
Yep. And Texas, I don't even want to touch on this.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be wonderful to watch Beto O'Rourke go down in flames once again.
Yep, absolutely. He's thinking third time's the charm. He wants to run for the U.S. Senate and lose. He wants to run for president and lose. Guess what? Now you're going to run for governor and lose.
Yep.
See you out the door, Beto.
Yep. Let's save Minnesota for last.
Yeah.
Because for us Minnesotans, it's a passionate issue. Let's head over to Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
In my mind, Tony Evers is done. I think it's a done deal at this point. The incumbent Democrat governor has not been too popular, and as of late, Tim Michels has been performing well in the polls.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We're going to see Tim Michels take this thing, and like you said, Tony Evers, he is not popular. He's Joe Biden 2.0, same thing with Charlie Crist in Florida, and people don't want that, and especially in Wisconsin, people are fed up. And Tim Michaels, Trump endorsed. I'm so excited to see that guy in there. He's not a career politician. It's nice to see some new fresh face.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering how he would be doing, because there are polls that have Evers up still, and there are polls that have him kind of locked in a dead heat. But Rebecca Kleefisch was supposed to be the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a done deal, and
then Trump got involved.
Trump got involved and endorsed. I've heard it both ways. Tim Michaels.
Yeah, it goes. I'm not sure what the correct.
Okay.
Most people say Michaels, but I could be wrong. So.
Okay. I've actually been over to Wisconsin the past couple days. I've seen a lot of Ron Johnson signs, and I'm seeing a lot of signs for Tim as well. So it should be good for Republicans.
Yep,
I'm going to put that as lean red. I don't think he has as great of a chance as Ron Johnson. I think Ron Johnson has it, but I also think that Tony Evers is gone.
I think so too. And let's go to Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer. She is, one of the worst governors. I couldn't even imagine if I was in Michigan living under those COVID lockdowns while her husband, gets to go out on boats and gets to party. And, she was the biggest hypocrite of all of them.
Mm-hmm. She got caught up in a lot of that. And what's interesting in Michigan, and it could be the Democrats' X factor, is that there's also an abortion proposition on the ballot to make it a constitutional right. Now, this is crazy because they're also including a bunch of other stuff. It includes the right to get an abortion up until the point of birth, like no rules on abortion whatsoever. I believe there's some gender nonsense in there as well, but don't quote me on that. So it's really just, it's kind of similar to the abortion referendum in Kansas, where it's just kind of worded a little bit weird.
Yep.
And I feel like the Democrats are reaching here. But people really care about abortion, especially in a state like Michigan. So it very well could drive Democrats to the polls when quite frankly, there is an enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats. So if there were to be a toss-up here, I genuinely do think it's Michigan. I do not know how it's going to go, but because we are being optimistic today, I would like to say it is lean red.
I'd love to see it happen. Going to be a close one. I can't say which way it's going to go either, so let's keep up with the optimism and say that Gretchen Whitmer is out of here.
At Tudor-Dixon, so the primary was a bit interesting. James Craig, Detroit police chief, was in the race among a few other candidates, and he seemed like the de facto nominee. But in Michigan, you need a certain number of petition signatures in order to get on the ballot. And the firms that a lot of these candidates hired,
four of these candidates had been removed from the ballot after they used this agency that was using fake signatures, and they used it for all four of the campaigns. Like the Secretary of State's office wasn't going to figure it out, and so, like you said, the de facto nominee eliminated from it because he hired some bad people to collect the petitions.
Which is just crazy to think about. And that's when everyone was dooming about Michigan, like, oh, we don't have a real candidate. But I think Republicans should put their trust behind Tudor-Dixon. She's a former political commentator. She's a mother of like 4 kids, and she's just really successful, really sharp.
And she's done a good job uniting the base.
Yes, indeed.
She's collected every side of the GOP, so it's good to see.
Yep, so if, again, I don't want to put any toss-ups on this map, but that's probably going to be the one I'm least convinced about. Although I saw one of your predictions earlier, and you might have a surprise for me. So let's keep it rolling. Let's head over to the great state of Pennsylvania. Not talking about Ohio. DeWine is gonna make it. Democrats like him too. So Pennsylvania. What do you see happening for the governor's race in Pennsylvania?
Right, and this completely depends on how big of the uptick is in the Republican majority. If this is an R+5, maybe R+6, R+7 turnout, where we see an increased turnout by Republicans, the higher the better for Mastriano. Doug Mastriano is up against Josh Shapiro in the state of Pennsylvania for governor. Doug Mastriano is hardcore. He's awesome. Yep. And the
state senator, and Shapiro is the current attorney general.
Yep, correct. Yep. And Doug Mastriano, he's not been afraid to call it all out. He was there for the January 6th going to the Capitol, making
me.
sure that our politicians. You okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It was one of those like tickly coughs.
Yeah, got to get it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Doug Mastriano, he stood with the people every time. He won a tough primary, and now he's going to have a real tough election. It's going to be close, but with Dr. Oz carrying the ticket, with him at the top of it, we might see some ballot, we're split ticket voting on this one. Hopefully it's not enough. I would love to see Doug Mastriano win. I'd say it lean blue, but we'll see.
Yeah, what we're currently seeing, so Pennsylvania is one of those states where they have party affiliation on the ballot. Minnesota isn't one of these states, but you're able to see absentee ballots returned by party affiliation. And Democrats are just crushing it in terms of absentee ballots. So this gives me a little bit of pause. Like, Republicans are really going to have a strong turnout on Election Day. So I'm going to have this one as lean blue. It's tough, and I was very optimistic for Doug Mastriano early on, but the Republican Governor Association has not been helping him out.
Right.
They're not optimistic about him. He's been vastly outraised by Josh Shapiro. And look, I think this is a state that prefers Republican senators and Democrat governors. You saw that with Tom Wolf and
Pat Toomey.
Pat Toomey, right? Although he was a bit more moderate than I'd say Oz is, even though Oz is something of a rhino
Right,
himself.
yeah, and Oz probably will be better than Toomey. So there is some upside.
It's a slight
in this.
upgrade.
Yeah,
Well, it's Dr. Oz. Like, this
yeah,
is kind of
it could be fun. It could be fun. Yeah.
All right. Everyone's been buzzing about the New York governor's race. Why is that?
Yeah, Lee Zeldin has been growing in the polls, and Kathy Hochul has been running a terrible campaign ever since the Andrew Cuomo scandals that were going on, and he was stepped aside from office. Kathy Hochul had to take the reins, and she has not done a good job leading New York. Everybody sees the increase in crime. Everybody sees how she's tied to Biden. Everybody in her administration is still just going after Trump nonstop. You know, they have their priorities entirely screwed up. They're not in there for the people, and Lee Zeldin is running a fantastic campaign, putting it out there. Unfortunately, from what I think about New York, I think that a lot of the conservatives already left. I think that everybody that would be voting Republican got out of New York while they still had some time, and because COVID was terrible, a lot of these, a lot of the things that went on in New York forced the conservatives to leave. So I don't even know if the population is even there anymore for a Lee Zeldin victory. I would love to see it, but that's one that I also say is probably going to stay in the hands of the Democrats, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I said earlier, this is the Republican equivalent of blue Oklahoma. Like, the polls are looking good, and that's why the only reason people have been paying attention to this recently. The polls have been within 10 points, which, look, if it comes down to a single-digit race, like, good on Lee Zeldin. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Hochul is just not a good candidate. She really isn't. And this is a similar situation in Pennsylvania where the debate was just so terrible. She's not a good debater. And you saw the polls reflect that afterward. And Lee Zeldin is, of course, clipping some of her responses.
Oh, yeah.
I think a notorious one I've heard is, well, why do you care about crime so much? She said that during the debate, talking to Lee Zeldin, kind of getting a little mad that he's hitting her on a crime.
Yeah.
But really, that's what it is in New York. People are upset, and I think if you can get north of 35% in New York City, Zeldin has a chance.
Absolutely.
But it's unlikely, so we're going to leave it as is. I think that's lean blue or likely blue, one of those two. Vermont and New Hampshire aren't two. These are states home to notorious rhino Republican governors. Phil Scott in Vermont and Chris Sununu in New Hampshire. They're going to win. Nothing new to see there.
And Phil Scott, he's essentially a Democrat. All he does is back the Vermont Democratic Party and everything that they do. So things are just what they are in that one.
But let's head to Maine, because I think you have some thoughts on this one.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I've been following the Maine election, and Paul LePage is someone who I've followed for a long time. He's the Republican nominee. He's the former governor of Maine, and he's been someone he's won unlikely elections before. He's been able to galvanize the base. He's always been, a strong guy. And as of now, I think Maine is upset with Janet Mills to the point where they're willing to replace her. And especially when they have a battle-tested leader, someone who has proven to be there for the people, I think that Paul LePage was the best candidate that Maine could have put up. It's a very divided race. He's got the support of Susan Collins, while Angus King is supporting Janet Mills. This is a real close race, and it shows how different of a state Maine is compared to others.
Yeah, Paul LePage is the former governor, and he was actually surprisingly conservative from what I remember.
Yep.
And if you remember about Susan Collins, she just won re-election in Maine in 2020 by a surprising margin, too.
Absolutely.
The polls showed that she was down in almost every single poll.
And that was even with this crazy ranked choice voting.
Right.
So even with this ranked choice voting, she was still able to pull it off.
Yeah.
And that was an election I figured that was going to happen when I saw how radical the Democrat was, and considering how radical Janet Mills has been, people are willing to just get back to normal, get back to the way that things were, and that's how things were with Paul LePage.
So we're going to be optimistic on this one?
Oh,
then?
absolutely. I think that one's going to shift.
All right. Lean red.
Awesome.
Tilt red. All right.
And everything else in the South, I think we know everything's going to go to DeSantis and whatnot. Everyone's going to take it out, so no issues on that. So we should just hop right into Minnesota.
Same with Kemp in Georgia.
Yep.
Obviously, these coastal states here, you mentioned you might want to talk about Rhode Island. Do you have anything to say there?
The only thing of interest there is just that the Democratic nominee, the incumbent governor, had a very tough primary. He only got about a third of the support, so he barely won his primary. The Republicans seem to have nominated a good candidate. Just because of how liberal it is and how feckle some of these voters are, I'm not sure it can go red. But, we might end up seeing that surprise.
Yeah, and Massachusetts and Maryland aren't even worth talking about. Both states had Republican governors who are both retiring. Both are moderate, very traditional Northeast Republican. So it's not going to be too much of a difference having Democrats in office there.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, let's go back to Minnesota.
Absolutely.
I'm wearing my Walls failed hat.
Absolutely. He did.
And he did. And, look, it's going to break my heart, but Scott Jensen has a tough race ahead. Like, I just don't. Polls have had him close, and actually Trafalgar Group did a poll a few weeks back that had Jensen up by 1 point.
Yep.
Within the margin of error, of course, but Scott Jensen has a chance if I had to make a prediction. I'm sad to say. I know we want to be optimistic, but, like, this is beyond optimism, I think. It's just the reality that Jeff Johnson lost this seat by 11 points in 2018. It's a different environment now, so I think it's going to be within 1 to 2 points, but I do think
with this one, I think we maybe just leave it as a toss-up, because I really think that this is the race. It could go either way. It's going to be an uphill battle for Scott Jensen. We know how much money that they've been pouring into Tim Walz's campaign. We know how desperate they're getting. We know what kind of ads they're running. We know that they're smearing Scott Jensen with every little thing that they can. And obviously, some of that is going to win some voters. But where it stands right now, I think just for the sake of hope, I think that we need to leave that as undecided, because Minnesota can change it. Minnesota can take out Walz. This is the election to do it, and we got to be hopeful. This is the election. We could leave it as a toss-up. Obviously, the Democrats are, looking better in most polls, but this is something that it really could go either way, and, I'm looking forward to seeing the results come in.
Well, look, so here's what's interesting. There are 2 seats statewide, the Attorney General and the State Auditor, where Republicans have been polling ahead in actually a few polls. So I just don't believe there's that much split ticket voting. I don't think it's that much of a thing anymore, to be honest with you, but it very well could be.
Yep.
I think there is a chance that Jim Schultz, the Republican for Attorney General, gives Jensen a little bit of a boost. Especially because I know so many Republicans are just pissed off with Tim Walz and his administration. So,
oh, yeah.
All right. You win.
All right.
Undecided. Because I do
this
think
is up to you, the people. This is up to you. That's why we're saying it's up in the air. It's up to the people. It's up to if you show up and get out and vote. We can take out Tim Walz. I'd love to see it happen.
I do think it's possible. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if it's probable. I think it's possible. And, man, imagine the stuff that Republicans could get done.
Absolutely.
If you have Scott Jensen there, assuming that he doesn't end up being a rhino. And I think that's what we need to remember. He had a bit of a record in the Minnesota Senate as being that maverick, or that moderate or that compromise or whatever word you want to throw in there. So we'll see.
Yep, we'll see.
All right. Well,
Very excited for it.
That's it for our Senate and governor predictions. Take it to the bank. Go and predict it. Pour your life savings into all the races we predicted because we're going to call them correctly. And you have that for
this is a fact.
It's a fact. We're from the future and we know what happens.
Absolutely.
And
wear a life jacket because this is about to be a red tsunami.
That was a good one. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a fun election night. I hope you guys stay up and watch it with us. I don't think we're doing any kind of stream or anything, but
we'll be up watching all the election results as they come in. Going to be very, very exciting. I'm so excited to see what happens in Minnesota and nationwide. We are taking our country back. This is the election 2022. Red Wave. Happy to be a part of it.
Yes, sir. All right. That's it for us. Thanks for watching.
Signing off.